Good evening, Cuse Nation. Welcome to the Upstate Orange podcast on FingerLakes1.tv. Sorry about the intro cutting off there. Not sure exactly what happened, but yeah. I'm Jim Sinacropi. I'll be joined by the professor, Brad Connor, from live inside the FingerLakes1.tv studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York, on Sunday, January 17th, 2016. And tonight, we'll be talking about two Cuse wins. Last week, we talked about two Cuse losses. That wasn't much fun. But this week, two big wins against BC. That's always fun to pound those losers. And Wake Forest, a little surprise down there at the margin. But now tomorrow night, Duke, we head down to Cameron, and that'll be our chance to get us back on the side of the bubble that we want to be on, and we'll talk about it tonight. We'll have some great Orange trivia later in the show, so stick with us for the next 45 minutes or so. The Upstate Orange podcast is brought to you by Generations Bank with locations in Auburn, Farmington, Geneva, Phelps, Seneca Falls, Union Springs, and Waterloo. Be sure to check out their mobile banking app or visit them online at mygenbank.com. So, let's bring in the professor live via telephone from Cincinnati, Ohio. Brad, you're a Demon Deacon attending grad school at Wake Forest. What do you make of the total annihilation of Wake by the Orange on Saturday?
Yeah, I'll say I haven't watched too many Wake Forest games since my time down there. I watched a lot when I was there, but I don't remember seeing a less ready Wake Forest team than the team we saw the other night. They didn't look like they came to play at all, and Syracuse just stuck it to them from the very beginning. It was great to see, and Trevor Cooney obviously had the game we like to see him have, but it wasn't even just him. I think everybody really stepped up their game a little bit around him, and the defense was great, and it's great to see. And Wake's done some good things this year, and so that's a decent win. They lost to Virginia Tech earlier in the week, so that's they're maybe slumping a little bit, but that's one on the road you definitely hang your head on. When it comes to tournament time.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I mean, it's just what this team needed, really. In retrospect, we didn't really get to see how the team will close. Because they haven't been able to close games because the margin was so wide that they were really able to coast to the win in the last 10 minutes and even play some of the walk-ons and some of the other guys that are coming up a little bit, getting a few more minutes off the bench. And so we'll talk about that. But let's get to the big five topics of the week. And question one, Boeheim turned this thing around. He comes back. We play North Carolina tough until the end in the Dome, and then we come back with a couple of big wins, and it seems like the ship is back on track. Is that attributable to Jim Boeheim being back on the sideline?
So I'll say it probably has as much to do with a more favorable schedule than anything. When Mike Hopkins was there, they played four very tough games, Pitt, at Miami, Clemson, who's turned out to be a giant killer of late, and Carolina, who's a top 10 team. BC and Wake are not in that caliber by any stretch, so I'm reserving judgment a little bit. But the margin of victory in those two games definitely leaves a good taste in everybody's mouth that things are on a bit of an uptick.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is turning it around. It's, again, Hall of Fame coach. It's not just on the sideline, but it's in practice. It's everything. He's the leader. He's the head guy. And even as much as the players love Hopkins and as much as I'm looking forward to him eventually taking over the program from Boeheim, he's not Jim Boeheim. And at this point, he's still the assistant coach. Our head guy wasn't there. So I think that's played a role. So I'm optimistic now about the rest of the season, with Boeheim back at the helm. But, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, But I think it'd be impossible to say this is a better team with Mike Hopkins than with Jim Boeheim.
Right.
A better team with Jim Boeheim as a coach. And Coach Boeheim even said it. He said, Hopkins is coaching with my guys. They're Boeheim's players. He recruited them. He knows how to talk to them. He knows how to get the most out of them. Mike Hopkins is still figuring that stuff out. They're definitely going to be better under Jim Boeheim. No question about it. It wouldn't have been a punishment if the team was better off without the head coach that was being punished. So the NCAA knew that, and they did what they had to do, and this is a better team now than it was when Boeheim was watching from a hotel room with Jay Billis. But this is a good team. He's going to make them a little bit better. We'll see how much over the course of the next two games. I think that's when we'll really see what this team might be made of.
And even that Clemson team that beat us in overtime. That loss looks a little less bad as when I was walking down the hill from the Dome after that game. They went on to beat Duke.
Yeah.
So, and then Notre Dame went on to beat Duke, and now we got to play Duke. It's probably not the best time to have to go to Cameron for Syracuse.
I don't know. That team's looking like they've got some chinks in their armor. I don't know. That's a team that's not very confident right now. It's maybe the best time to get Duke, really.
Yeah.
I mean, they might come in fired up and angry, but they're also a bit wounded, and I think they may play desperate, but they may just have a shock to their confidence. I think could go either way, really. Syracuse could be picking them up at the right time, or it could be they could be dead in the water as soon as they get there. We'll see.
Right. I
see Clemson. They not only beat Duke, they beat Miami not at Miami, but against Miami. They beat Louisville a week ago. So that's 3 straight wins against 3 top 25 teams. They Clemson after they beat Syracuse. That's exactly what they did. They beat Syracuse and they beat Louisville. They beat Duke. They beat Miami. I mean, that's a good stretch right there. That team's a good team now. It turns out.
And we had him beat. The game was won. Follow the guy. Don't even let him shoot the 3-pointer, and we probably win. Apparently that's what Hopkins wanted his guys to do, but instead it's an overtime loss in what is shaping out to have been a real quality win. But we'll have to find our quality wins elsewhere. That Wake Forest win on the road, quality win, though, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Wake Forest had some good wins this year. They won at LSU. LSU's got Ben Simmons, who's probably the best player in the country.
That's all you ever hear about on SportsCenter.
They beat UCLA. They beat Indiana. Beat Arkansas, who was a decent team. I mean, they've had some really nice wins, Wake Forest. So that's not going down to Wake and beating them, especially in the manner they did. That's a real solid win.
Well, last week we talked about Tyler Roberson not being consistent enough and not being dominant enough as a junior as he needed to be. Kind of the curve of his maturation and growth and development. But what did he do? He must have listened to the podcast because, he came right back this week and just had a great week in these 2 Syracuse wins. 12 rebounds, 10 points against Boston College, 16 points, 13 rebounds. Those are the double-doubles that we need to see, every week. As a matter of fact, I'll go as far as say is that this team is going to have a tough time losing if we can count on Roberson for 15 or more points and 10 or more rebounds. I was really pleased. And tomorrow night at Duke, Monday night at Duke, I want to see if he can do it again.
I love what I'm seeing. He's aggressive. He's attacking the basket. He's forcing plays. I mean, as we've said before, they don't run anything for him, but he's getting the ball at the elbow or at the wing, and he's not just going up with a jump shot. He's looking to put the ball on the floor and attacking the basket. I think he's doing real nice things offensively, and the rebounding. I mean, rebounding is effort really, and he's had games where he's been very, very good rebounding. He's had some where he sort of floated a little bit, and disappeared a bit, and that's not what we saw the last 2 games at least, and going back a couple of games now, he's really brought the energy and the effort on the rebounding side. 2 double-doubles. I mean, that's exactly what we need from him, and it's going to get a little bit tougher here this week if he can continue that, and we can get some good big man play around him. If Coleman can stay out of foul trouble and Leiden can start hitting some shots, I think that bodes real well. Yeah,
it's funny how quick it can change. We were really saying, look, this guy is just nowhere near where he should be as a junior. That's what we were saying last week. And then, of course, 1 week later, we're singing a different tune. And speaking of singing a different tune, Brad, we have probably no player in the history of this podcast have we been harder on than Trevor Cooney. And we've lamented some of the things he's done along with the rest of Cuse Nation. Jim Boeheim in the postgame conference after the Wake win where Cooney had 25 points, 6 of 11 from 3. He said, a lot of our fans don't think he's a good shooter, but all these guys in these other cities think he's a good shooter. And I want to not bash or criticize anything about Trevor Cooney tonight. That's my pledge for this show. As a matter of fact, in this, our third topic of the night, I want to just hear about the good things that Trevor Cooney brings. And I'll start with this one. He's running around all 40 minutes out there, making, especially teams that are playing man-to-man against us, he's running them ragged. The guy has a motor that just doesn't quit. Goes. And except for getting out on shooters, he's pretty good defensively in the zone. I wish he would get out on shooters a little more, but a pretty solid guy to have in there defensively. Percentage-wise, a solid free throw shooter. Maybe not quite as good as we hoped he would be percentage-wise, but still one of the better free throw shooters on the team. And when it's all said and done, his career percentage will be up there, top 25, probably Syracuse all-time. And when he gets hot, he gets hot. We hope he can sustain that hot shooting over a period of games or a period of a tournament, the ACC tournament or the NCAA tournament. This is his last go around. He's gotten hot here now against Wake. We'll see if he can carry that over into Duke, the North Carolina game as well. So as of late, he's been pretty consistently, hot for Trevor Cooney. So heap some praise on our boy Trevor Cooney, Brad.
I'm glad you brought this one up this week, because I was thinking about that in the game last night or yesterday, and certainly that made you feel good about what you see from Trevor Cooney, and those are the games that you would hope to see. And I was thinking this during the game of how, yes, we've been so hard on this guy, and it's not fair, because I think we all sort of anticipated he was going to be the next Jerry McNamara. And let's be clear, Jerry McNamara is one of the best players to ever play in this program. Like as going in, that was just a completely unfair comparison.
Sure.
He was always going to be the next McNamara, and he's not that guy. He's a different style player. He's got a different build. He's got a different makeup. He's better athletically probably, but he's not the same shooter. And we're waiting for him to go crazy and blow up, and he hasn't done that. And I think we've been disappointed by not seeing that. But at the same time, there's so many good things he does that we do overlook. I agree with you on that. But there's other games where where he takes the shots that you don't want him taking, and they're the irrational heat check kind of type games, and does make some turnovers. But it's not because he's necessarily doing stupid things. It's because he's trying to do too much. We saw the same thing from Andy Routins, and we loved Andy Routins. I mean, name a Syracuse fan that didn't love Andy Routins and what he brought to this team.
Yeah.
But he did a lot of the same things. He'd take a lot of chances on defense. A lot of times it would work out. A lot of times it wouldn't. He'd make a lot of thread-the-needle type passes that would be great and highlight film type plays, but a lot of times he turned over. And Andy Routins he turned over a lot, but boy, we loved it when he got hot, and we loved it when he made the big play. And I think Trevor Cooney's a lot more like Andy Routins than he is like Jerry McNamara, and that's probably the better comparison. And that if we had made that alignment going in, I think we'd think more favorably of the career of Trevor Cooney than we probably do, unfortunately, going into his fifth year now.
Yeah, well, fair enough. I agree with you. But one thing that I don't think either one of us could debate is that we need the good Trevor Cooney if we're going to do anything the rest of this year and into the postseason. I mean, we're going to live and die by Cooney, right? I mean, among other players, but if he does not fulfill his role as a guy playing 38 minutes a game, this team's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I think Coach Boeheim has put his saddle on Trevor Cooney and said, we're going to ride this guy. Between he and Benajay, when you play a guy 37, 38 plus minutes a night, you're making a commitment to that guy, and you're going to sink or swim with how he does. And the good Trevor Cooney was lights out last night, and that was exactly what this team needed. If he goes 4 for 15 in the next game, he might shoot you right out of it. But that's the bet that Coach Boeheim and the staff has made between him and Benajay.
Yep. Well, we've also talked in recent weeks about the lack of the development of our bench, and we get to see a few more minutes from some of these guys in these blowouts. Tyler Lydon actually playing a little less, mainly due to foul trouble early. Only 18 minutes in the win against Wake. But Frank Howard, 14 minutes against Boston College, 17 minutes against Wake. Chinoso Oboko had a solid 13 minutes. He had 5 fouls in 13 minutes, 3 rebounds. But, and defensively, I don't care if Chinoso Oboko has 5 fouls in 13 minutes. As long as he can, play a good, solid defensive 13 minutes and pull down a couple of rebounds, that's all we need about him, because there's no way this team is going to make any type of run for consecutive games without having some foul trouble inside on the front court. So, what do you think? Are we bringing these guys along a little bit more, Brad, than maybe that you and I thought we were? Or was this just a matter of them getting minutes in a blowout? And tomorrow, Monday night against Duke, Chinoso Oboko does not see the floor, and maybe Frank Howard doesn't see the floor. What do you think?
Jim, I will be floored if Chinoso Oboko walks onto the floor of Cameron Indoor Stadium while the clock is ticking. I will be shocked if I saw that. That would unequivocally be a function of foul trouble and nothing else. It would have to be dire foul trouble, because, frankly, that's why he played yesterday. It was dire foul trouble. He didn't enter the game until Coleman picked up his third, and then it was after not only after Coleman picked up his third, but after Roberson, I think, picked up his third, and then Lydon, I think, picked up his third. And they had to sit 2 of those 3 guys, and then they had to bring Oboko in. I could be wrong on that, but I remember commenting to my son, and I was watching it. I said, well, now they've got to go with Oboko. And they didn't right away, but then they finally did for like the last 30 seconds of the first half.
Right.
And then spot duty in the second half, but only because the other guys got to 4 fouls. And Oboko can give you productive minutes, I think, on defense. He's not going to score. But 3 rebounds in 13 minutes, that's not bad. I mean, that equates to 8 or 9 rebounds if he plays a 30-minute game like the starters do, and that's not bad. So that's what Dajuan Coleman's giving you, rebounding.
Right.
No, that's not bad. He's not going to give you offense, so you're playing 5-on-4 on the offensive end probably, because they're not going to guard him, and so you're allowing the defense to overplay some of the other weapons you have. But he can play. The fact that he didn't even see the court against Boston College, I mean, why not? You're killing that team.
Right.
Why would you not play the guy?
Yeah.
That part makes no sense. And so that's Oboko. I think when it relates to Frank Howard, he's taking the minutes that Caleb Joseph used to have. Caleb Joseph didn't see the floor against Boston College. You kidding me? They blew him out, and Caleb Joseph can't even see the floor.
He's done.
Adrian Autry Jr. played a minute, and Caleb Joseph couldn't. I don't think he was hurt or sick. I didn't read anything about any of that.
Yeah,
And Caleb Joseph yesterday was playing with walk-ons. He went in with 4 minutes left, played 2 minutes with the backups, and then 2 minutes with Doyan Akindobi out of Yeye and Mike Sutton and Adrian Autry Jr. I mean, that's what Caleb Joseph is left with. So Frank Howard, he played 17 minutes yesterday. That earlier in the season would have been 10 minutes from Caleb Joseph and 7 minutes for Frank Howard. So he's taking all the backcourt substitute minutes. They're doing a little better job, I think, of giving Cooney a little bit of time. He only played 35 minutes yesterday, and against BC he only played 30. So that was good. I think they were able to spread those minutes around a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, Caleb Joseph is a complete afterthought on this team, and frankly, the only reason Oboko played yesterday is because of foul trouble.
Yeah, I agree. We're not really building these guys up. Howard, though, is the one guy who I think will be a factor, and we'll probably see a little more of him going forward. But what I think will happen is somewhere along the line, in a key game, maybe even an NCAA tournament game, you're going to have to pull a Oboko out there because of foul trouble in key situations, endgame situations. And, frankly, I don't think he's going to be prepared for it because of his lack of time. But it will happen. It'll happen.
Yeah, I agree.
So we'll just have to keep our fingers crossed that he's practicing hard and is ready to go and isn't fazed by seeing court time in a big game for the first time in his career, in the Sweet 16 or whatever it might be. Or let's hope. We can only hope, right?
Yeah, I'd love to see him get 4 or 5 minutes either against Duke or Virginia, but I'd be floored if I saw that.
Well, speaking of getting into that NCAA tournament, big opportunities this week. Duke and Virginia starting out tomorrow night, Monday night at Duke. Big Monday game. Can we win? Can we win at Cameron? I mean, they're struggling as much as anybody. I know they're 9th ranked. Tomorrow that'll change when the new poll comes out. Having lost twice this week, but we're hot. They're not. Who's to say we can't pull this one out if the refs let us?
That's the question, right? We'll never know the answer to that until you get right into it. This Duke team is a weird team to figure out. They're a very hot and cold team this season.
Yeah.
They don't really have a whole lot of great wins. They're against in their best games. They've lost most of those games. I'm looking through their schedule now. I don't think they've beaten a ranked team this year.
Yeah.
They've beaten. They're 3-2 in the ACC, and they beat Wake and Virginia Tech and BC, and they stomped on Virginia Tech, and that's no surprise. And BC
VTech's only lost though, right?
Wake by 6, and Syracuse did a lot more damage there than Wake seemed to have done.
Mm-hmm.
They beat Indiana. That was a good win. They beat Georgetown, which Syracuse actually can't say that. They beat VCU. That's a decent win, but the rest of their wins aren't very good. They lost to Kentucky, and that's not a surprise. They lost to Utah. And then this week, they lost at home to Notre Dame, and that's not Notre Dame's it's not a great Notre Dame team this year. They're solid, but they're not great.
Yeah, they played
lost
good.
At Clemson. I think this team, they're a young team, and I think their freshmen aren't doing the same damage that their freshmen had done certainly last year and probably the year before that. They've got some nice pieces, but I think they're still figuring it out. That's they could gel in any one game, and then the next game they could play like they did in losing to Notre Dame. So I don't know what you're going to get until you actually get into it on Monday night.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I think it's the perfect type of team for us to beat. They're scoring a lot of points offensively, which I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're not going to get their average 86 points a game against Syracuse unless it goes to overtime. I think our zone defense will keep them below that. And as far as their defense, they're giving up almost 70 points a game. It's like 140th in the country defense, and that's what we can really get something going offensively against a weaker defensive team, across the board. So I kind of like the way this matchup is setting up for Syracuse, and it really bothers me that we lost that game 2 years ago when C.J. Fair got called for the drive, because I want to get that win in Cameron. I don't want to go 5-6 years into this thing and say, oh, Syracuse has never beaten Duke at Cameron since coming to the ACC. Just get it over with. We should have won the first one. That was crap. So let's get it over tomorrow night, and let's get this team on the right side of the bubble. Let's shoot some. Let's have Cooney and Benajay both shoot good. Can that happen? Maybe if maybe we beat Duke by 10 tomorrow, 15, 20. Maybe we do to Duke what we did to Wake. That's what I want to see tomorrow night.
So that won't happen. I think the only way Syracuse wins, and I do think there's a chance that they could win, they got to get out to a big lead and hold on at the end. Syracuse will not beat this team by double figures. I don't see that happening. But I do see the possibility of them winning. I think you need big games from Benajay and from Cooney. I think you need, a 10 to 12 point, 10 to 12 rebound game from Roberson.
Mm-hmm. You
need Coleman to be on the floor for 25 to 30 minutes and not be in foul trouble. If you can have that, and they can have a presence inside. Duke's not great inside, so I think that's one way that Syracuse can have a little bit of an advantage when if Roberson's being active and Coleman can be a presence. Coleman did some nice things offensively the other night. I saw some decent low post moves. I think he's really starting to build a little confidence offensively, and I hope I can see more of that on Monday. And, Richardson, I think he's an X factor. He's sort of the forgotten guy. I think when we think about if it's Cooney, if it's Benajay and Roberson, I think Richardson can really be an impact guy. But Duke has a lot of weapons too.
Well, in that Wake game, he comes out of there with 5 points in a game where we were just lighting it up. So, but it wasn't that long ago that he was the only guy that was scoring. So it's nice that we have all these interchangeable parts. Hopefully they can all begin firing at the same time. But, at least two of those three, Richardson, Benajay, and Cooney, two of those three shoot 35 to 45% from three any given game. We're going to be looking pretty good. And then hopefully Tyler Lydon maybe throws in, makes 2 of 3 or 2 of 4, something like that. But then some production inside from Coleman and Roberson. So we've seen it all happen, various points, over the last few weeks. See it all come together tomorrow night against Duke. And then what I think will be maybe an even just as difficult will be when we travel to Virginia later in the week. So Looking at the upcoming schedule here, Monday night, 7 o'clock at Duke. That game's on ESPN. And then Saturday, a noon start at Virginia. That's going to be on ESPN or ESPN2. And then looking ahead beyond that, the Cuse has some time off until they play Thursday, the 28th of January, 7 o'clock, hosting Notre Dame, also on the ESPN family of networks. So it's finally kind of kicking in. That North Carolina game in the Dome was a little bit of a taste of, but we're inching towards February, and the games get bigger, and the spotlight turns more to college basketball, and we get closer to the ACC tournament. We get closer to the NCAA tournament, or hopefully not the NIT tournament, but it's a great time of year to talk Syracuse basketball. And while a couple weeks ago it looked like we might be dragging here at the end of the season for this podcast, kind of like happened last year after the sanctions, we're showing up and doing a podcast every week, and it was almost like a funeral march coming up here to the studio every week. But this year, we might be redeeming. We might be, rejuvenated here heading into February.
Well, a big week. A couple of good options to improve the resume.
Well, before we move ahead and talk some more about this year's Cuse team, I want to hit some Connor's Corner trivia and try my hand this week at what you have for us.
All right, I have two questions for you that are completely unrelated whatsoever.
Okay.
So the first one, what do Wagner, Maryland, Baltimore County, Chaminade, St. Francis of New York, Niagara, Rutgers, and Syracuse all have in common?
Geez, that is a crazy list. And you're saying that Syracuse is in that list?
It's a pretty pathetic list, with the exception of Syracuse, I would argue.
Well, I was gonna say that, AJ Long is transferring to Wagner. He's their quarterback, football team quarterback, beginning of this year, guy that had some concussions, and now he's going to be at Wagner. But I don't think that's the answer.
No.
Chaminade, Wagner, and a bunch of Maryland, Baltimore County.
Niagara, St. Francis of New York, Rutgers, Chaminade.
Rutgers. I have no idea. No idea.
They're the only teams to have lost to St. John's this season.
Oh, I should have known that one. Yeah, that is pretty bad.
Since Syracuse lost to St. John's on, what was it? End of December 20-something, right?
Yeah.
St. John's has lost 9 straight games.
Hard to believe. They were so good that game. They looked good, at least. They killed us. They lost
to Butler this week, Georgetown, Marquette. Going backwards, Butler, Georgetown, Marquette, Xavier, Providence, Creighton, South Carolina. Those are all understandable losses. Decent teams, Big East, if not, South Carolina was top 25. New Jersey Institute of Technology and Incarnate Word.
Yeah, that Incarnate Word.
That St. John's has lost to since they managed to beat the Syracuse Orange.
Chris Mullen on the hot seat, maybe. I mean, that's terrible.
Man.
That is like rock bottom.
That is not a great resume for year one.
How do we lose?
7-12, St. John's. 0-6 in the Big East. They haven't played DePaul yet, so they're hoping, I guess, to draw DePaul for their first win of the season. But
I wouldn't count on it.
I wouldn't either. You just Incarnate Word and everything's on the table.
So how bad is that loss going to be on a resume?
That's the good question right there. That's a real good question. Because you beat Duke, and that only just offsets its loss to one of the bottom feeders in the entire nation, really.
It's really our only bad loss. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'd agree. Wisconsin beat Michigan State. So that turned out to be a better win than we originally thought.
And it is overtime. Any overtime loss is tough to consider too bad of a loss. So we lost overtime to Wisconsin and Clemson, both at home in the Dome, which makes them a little worse on the old resume. But that St. John's loss is hard to explain. And that basically a home game for us too down in Madison Square Garden. As any Syracuse fan knows, we consider that our home away from the Dome. New York college team. I remember the St. John's fans chanting New York's college team after
Syracuse doesn't get credit for road games when they win at Madison Square Garden nationally. It's just, they won in New York State.
Yeah, so, hey, that is a crazy list, Brad.
Yeah, that's unfortunate trivia. I'll leave that one there, and we'll go with a more favorable trivia question.
Okay.
Here, the part 2, which has absolutely nothing to do with the first. Thank God. Name all the current Syracuse alums playing professional basketball.
Worldwide?
Worldwide.
Wow, that's...
So let's split the list. Let's say how many are in the NBA, and then how many are across the world.
All right. Let me get my pen out here. To make a list, I got one column for NBA, and I got one column for international. And you're counting D League and all that good stuff too, right? We're not talking about the Rochester Razor Sharks, are we?
Syracuse had a player playing on the Rochester. Didn't they fold?
I think they did,
they
but
had one playing in the Razor Sharks. I guess.
Mookie Jones and Lawrence Moulton was their coach.
Did they actually go forward though? I thought something happened. They had to fold it.
No, I think they did. They're certainly not playing this winter. I know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's start with the easy ones. We got Carmelo.
Yep.
Hakeem Warwick.
Hakeem Warwick is not playing in the NBA.
Yeah, you're right. He's playing in China, right?
Playing in Australia.
Okay. So I'm going to put him on the
Warwick
international.
Is playing for the Melbourne United.
Okay, I got him on the international side, so we got Carmelo.
He's averaging 14 a game, by the way, Hakeem Warwick for the Melbourne United.
Other NBA guys, D-League or NBA, what about Chris McCullough?
He's not on anyone's roster right now.
He's not on a D-League roster? He was a first-round...
He's not playing. Okay, so he might be on a roster. He's not playing. He hasn't played this season for a professional basketball team. So let me modify the list then. The list is guys that have actually played basketball this season.
Okay. See you later, McCullough. No big deal.
I guess he's on somebody's roster. I don't know. I couldn't even tell you who.
Deion Waiters.
Deion Waiters, Oklahoma City, yeah. Waiters is averaging 9.4 points a game.
Yeah, you know what? This list is...
He had 20 this week against Minnesota.
Other Syracuse players playing in the NBA right now. I think that might be it. Who am I missing?
There's 20 more.
Is there? Dante Green is international?
Dante Green has not played in a professional basketball game this year.
Not even overseas or anything?
He's not on the list I have in front of me. I can tell you where it is.
But this is your dad sent you an article, right?
News.com.
Is this the article that you got sent from your dad?
Nope, that's something different. I'll talk about that later.
Oh, okay. I thought so. You're just kind of. Where'd you get this list from?
This is on Cuse.com, on the homepage of Syracuse University Athletics.
Okay. These are the parts where
don't go there. Don't look it up.
I won't. Just kind of go backwards through. So, got Michael Carter Williams.
Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, we've got.
He's averaging 12 a game for Milwaukee.
We got Tyler Ennis.
Tyler Ennis is correct. He's averaging 3 points a game for Milwaukee.
Tyler Ennis should be suiting up for the Orange tomorrow night at Duke.
He'll be a junior on this team right now.
Imagine that. I thought he would be a 4-year player.
They hit a half-court shot against Pitt, and everything was...
now he's averaging 3 points a game in Milwaukee.
Yep.
Also sleeping on a big pile of money.
Better than you or me, I guess.
Yeah, okay. So we got Mello, Waiters, Williams, Ennis. Who else am I missing out on here?
Two more NBA guys you're missing.
I think Christmas is with the Pacers, isn't he? Or not the Pacers. He got activated by somebody.
He's playing games in the D League actively.
Okay.
He played some D League games this week.
So we got Christmas. Onuaku got picked up by somebody. I don't know if he saw any time, but I think he was. I know he was active in the D League.
I think he's with the D League. He's not playing right now. He might be hurt.
Okay.
All right, so this is a crappy list because they don't have guys that aren't actually playing. But
Right.
we'll make note of guys like Onuaku.
Sure.
I think he's on somebody's roster. I'm sure McCullough is.
Okay. Well, why don't you give me some hints on these NBA guys before we head over to the international side?
One guy plays for the Sixers.
Oh, my God. Jeremy Grant. Yep, of course.
Correct.
How could you miss
That
that
guy
one?
plays for the Clippers.
The Clips? Plays for the Clippers.
Formerly played for the Lakers.
Oh, Wes Johnson. Sometimes I forget about him.
Wes Johnson, because he's only a one-year guy.
Yeah.
Although so was Tyler Ennis. So was Carmelo.
Yeah, so was everybody on this list except for Deion Waiters. He was 2. Jeremy Grant was 2.
And Carter Williams was practically a one-year guy. He barely played his freshman.
Jeremy Grant
There's your NBA list.
Jeremy Grant be a senior this year, correct?
Left as a sophomore 2 years ago. I think you're right.
Can you imagine?
Imagine how good this team might be.
Ennis at point, Jeremy Grant at the 3. Wow. Well, no, that's just a pipe dream. So okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys active in the NBA
right now. That's the list. That's the NBA list.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah, it's not a bad list. That's as good as most programs can say.
One superstar in Carmelo. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple solid guys. I mean, Carter Williams is 12 a game.
Waiters is solid.
6 assists per game. Jeremy Grant's 9 points a game for the worst team in NBA history.
Yeah.
That's not so bad.
Yeah. And Wes Johnson's maybe time has passed a little, but he was probably the brightest of the stars besides Carmelo for, a couple of years.
Yeah, it just feels like he should have had that much better a career, It just feels like he had the game for the NBA, and it never seemed to pan out for him.
The NBA is a tough nut to crack. It's just.
Take a guy like Johnny Flynn. He just got unlucky. He got injuries. He got in a bad situation in Minnesota, and it's just all. It's just circumstance with him as much as anything.
This is a great article a couple of years ago. It might have been New York Times. I know. I think it was Grantland. It had a nice article about Johnny Flynn, and they really detailed the bad luck.
I remember reading that. Yep.
So
a lot of it was just luck, and sometimes it's where you land in the draft, and sometimes it's a good situation. Other times you just get screwed. That's just what happens.
So give me a hint on internationals in terms of number of guys that we're looking at here. I'm going to throw it out there. I'm going to say 12.
10 guys that are actively playing internationally, at least over the last month.
Okay, we got Warwick's
2
one.
guys are in the D League, and so I say international. That counts the D League. So there's 2 guys D League and then 8 guys internationally.
So we got Warwick, Christmas, and Onuaku, or no? Is he one of those 10?
Christmas is actively playing for the Fort Wayne Mad Ants in the D League.
Ah, the Mad Ants.
He's averaging 16 a game. Onuaku's not on this list, so he might be injured. He might not be on active roster. I'm not sure.
All right. We've got is Johnny Flynn playing in China? Somebody's playing in China. Is it Flynn?
Might be not actively though.
Okay.
They might not be in season either because not all of them play in the winter.
Yeah. Rick Jackson.
Rick Jackson's not on an active roster right now.
He isn't. Wow. Jeez, what kind of guy?
Which is weird because remember he had to pull himself out of the.
Yeah, I thought he was in Israel or something.
That they did, the Boeheim's Army team.
Yeah, that's right. Because he was going to Israel.
He got an
maybe?
offer with somebody, so he couldn't play at the end. And I don't remember who or where. Not actively playing right now, though.
Oh, jeez.
4 of these guys go back a few years.
So they're.
And then 4 or 5 of them are more recent.
Is Andy Rowton's still playing somewhere.
Andy Rowton is in Turkey.
Turkey, okay.
Yeah, he's averaging 14 and a half a game for Royal Haly Gaziantep in Turkey.
Probably getting paid pretty well. I don't know how they pay over there in Turkey, but he's probably doing okay for himself.
Yeah, tax-free usually. Probably paid for a place to live, gets to see the world. Not a bad deal.
CJ Fair in the D-League, or did he end up going overseas?
He's in the D-League. He's a teammate of Rakeem Christmas at the Fort Wayne Mad Ants.
Man, if I lived in Fort Wayne, I would have season tickets. I'd have a luxury. How much do you think a luxury box is at Fort Wayne?
$100, maybe 150.
A game or for the season?
For the season. For the season.
For the Mad Ants.
So, Syracuse dominates that team, apparently. Rakeem Christmas averages 16 a game for Fort Wayne, and C.J. Fair averages 14 a game for Fort Wayne. So between the two of them, they're averaging 30 points a game.
How about a guy who once dominated the Filipino League? I haven't heard much from him. I assume he's somewhere playing. That's Paul Harris.
Paul Harris is a good call. He's also playing in Turkey, so he and Andy Rowton are butting heads occasionally. Paul Harris plays for Usak Sportleaf. What that means?
That is a great franchise.
For Usak Sportleaf.
It's a great franchise.
It's legendary.
What other guys are there? I'm gonna. What about? I was gonna say Mookie Jones there for a second, but
no Mookie on this list.
Yeah, I just keep
no Mookie Jones on this list.
What about?
There's another Mookie on this list, though.
There's another. Mookie Watkins, Darryl Watkins.
Darryl Watkins is playing in France.
That's crazy.
I know it.
What
He's
is he?
10 points a game for Asvel Lyon Villeurbanne.
He must
France.
be 35 years old.
I know it.
Okay. Chris Joseph probably playing somewhere. He's just like 4 years removed.
Chris Joseph also playing in France. He and Watkins had some great Syracuse battles out there, I'm sure. Chris Joseph is playing for NK Orleans.
I would
10 points a game.
I think I'd rather play in France than Turkey.
Maybe true.
But it seems like our better
might be
players
better
are in
deal.
Turkey. Our better players are in Turkey, and these two, Watkins and Joseph, nothing against Joseph, are playing in France.
There's probably a pecking order based on which leagues have more sponsorship dollars.
Okay, so you know who I remember reading this summer got a somewhere was Bai Musakita.
Correct. Bai Musakita is in Belgium, playing for Stella Artois Leuven. 5 points a game, Bai Kita. For a 1 in 10 Stella Artois Leuven. Not a great season for them.
No, I wish we could maybe pick up some of these games on the internet. Maybe you could.
I'll bet NBA TV probably has some of these games. You tune in NBA TV at like 1 in the afternoon, you could probably catch some of these international games.
Okay, well, let's go with some other. I'm just thinking, guys, from the past 5 years.
You're only missing 2 on this list, so you don't have too much work to do.
Well, I'm gonna guess James Sutherland because he was what were we 3 years removed from James Sutherland, or 4?
James Sutherland's a good call. He's on this list. He's playing in Italy right now for Vanoli Cremona.
Italy?
He's only averaging 5 a game. He's not really getting a whole lot of run, it looks like.
Well, that's he's pulling a check, I guess, playing basketball. I just wonder how. Yeah, I wonder, how much money these guys are getting paid and what their plan is. If they're able to make enough that they can put some away and then come back to the U.S. and buy a house and get a regular job and be comfortable.
Yeah, I would think so. I was friends with a guy at Richmond when I was an undergrad, and he was talking about getting offers in Europe that were like $80,000 to $100,000 a year, and it's all tax free, and they pay for your housing.
Yeah, so you're really just putting it in the bank.
That was in 1994, so think about that now.
Sure. So what, we got one more guy?
One more guy. He's a guy you've always been fond of this guy, but you got to go back a few years.
I've been fond of him, huh? I know Devendorf isn't playing anywhere. I know Scoop Prodine isn't playing anywhere.
Nope. Unfortunately, this guy was a player during the dark days back in the 90s.
Oh, a 90s player.
Or no, I'm sorry, not in the 90s, in the mid 2000s.
Okay, 90s player would be getting up there.
Not the 90s.
Well, if Watkins is playing somewhere, is there any chance that Terrence Roberts is playing somewhere?
No, there's no chance at all that Terrence Roberts is playing anywhere other than Boeheim's Army. But
Boeheim's Army.
Think along the right lines.
Yeah, I don't. You know what? I didn't like Boeheim's Army. I watched some of those games on the internet. I think the whole thing was kind of stupid.
It was fun to watch in June and July.
Yeah, I suppose.
Go, but yeah, I mean, it wasn't a whole lot of.
I didn't. It
seemed. I wasn't about to call you up and dedicate a podcast to it.
I think a lot of the guys on that team are just a bunch of clowns.
Yeah, there's something to that. I mean, it's still summer league basketball. You know, how seriously do you take some of that stuff?
And they didn't win.
They're playing for $1 million. I mean, that's not small change, especially for a lot of these guys.
Is the guy that I'm thinking of? Did he play with those guys? Because I got a guy in mind right now.
Yeah.
How about Demetrius Nichols, former Chicago Bull?
Correct.
Nichols.
Correct. Demetrius Nichols. He's playing with CSKA Moscow in Russia.
Oh man.
15-1 CSKA Moscow.
Oh wow, man.
Averaging 7.5 points a game for a 15-1 Moscow team.
A national hero, and his name's Demetrius. That's Russian, isn't it?
Demetrius is Russian. Yeah, he probably fits right in.
Sure. So we got. Look at this list. Carmelo, Waiters, Michael Carter-Williams, Ennis, Grant, and Wesley Johnson. Those are NBA guys. And then other guys still cashing a paycheck somewhere. Hakeem Warwick, Rakeem Christmas, Andy Routen, C.J. Fair, Paul Harris, Darryl Watkins, which is the one that's most surprising to me, Chris Joseph, Pi Keita, James Sutherland, and Demetrius Nichols.
And let's not forget guys like Nikola and Onuaku that are probably on a roster somewhere, just aren't playing now.
They're percolating somewhere.
Yeah.
So, what do you think that is? Of all the guys on scholarship at Syracuse since going back to, let's say, Darryl Watkins and Demetrius Nichols days, so about 10 years, let's say for the past 10, 11, 12 years, this is probably 10% of all our scholarship players?
Yeah, Nichols and Watkins finished in 2007 because they came in as freshmen right after.
So about 9 years. About 9 years.
That was 2007. They're the oldest guys in this list. So you're going back. I mean, it's 10 years worth of players, and yeah, I mean this is 16 guys out of probably 60.
Yeah, we always talk about, hey, all these guys are going to play somewhere. And, I guess that's not even a real good way to look at it statistically, because guys like Johnny Flynn is a good example. A lot of these guys did cash a check. Some of them got to cash some big checks, but they just aren't playing anymore. So maybe it's a little higher, but still 1 out of every 4 is probably too high.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're a Carolina, I could see that, but Duke maybe. Duke guys don't always do as well in the pros.
Mm. Well, Brad, that's great.
Kentucky's a different deal.
Yeah, although they're down. Kansas lost this week. Kentucky lost again this week.
They did.
The whole landscape of college basketball is kind of unpredictable at the moment. Oklahoma might be the number 1 tomorrow.
Yeah, this is a very different season than we've seen the last several, where there's been a couple of really dominant teams. I don't see any dominant teams at all.
And that can only help us.
It seemed to me to be the cream of the crop, but then you see Kansas lose. I forget who they lost this week, but they're not as dominant as you've seen Kentucky in the past, and Duke and some others have been in the last several years. It's wide open.
That can only help us not only get into the tournament, but potentially maybe make a run. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good trivia as usual. I don't know where you come up with this stuff every week, but that was certainly an interesting one. Brought some names from the past up and got all the Cuse Nation up to speed on what Orange grads or alums or guys that used to wear the uniform are doing now. So running a little up against it here. Already 50 minutes into the show. It's time for Two for the Road. And I got to tell you, when I heard, I can't remember, who was it? Who was the announcers?
Dan Bonner last game. And
yeah.
I don't know who the play-by-play was.
Well, they called Trevor Cooney Terry Cooney. And, I'm just freaking sick of it. These guys are all they got to do is follow the league. A lot of the announcers on ESPN and CBS or Fox, they're covering the country. These ACC crews, they just got to know the teams in the ACC, and this guy calls them Terry Cooney. I mean, they're just terrible. They're actually hacks, and it's a joke. And I think that the average ACC fan just doesn't care. They just want to see Food Lion commercials.
Sponsored by Carolina Ford and Bojangles.
Yeah, it's we've harped on it before, and I hate it. And then to listen to these idiots, like Mike Jaminski's another one.
That's what I was just going to say. It seems like every Syracuse game on the ACC network is either Dan Bonner or Mike Jaminski. These guys had never once seen a Syracuse game in their lives until Syracuse went to the ACC. That's crazy.
Yeah, nor do they care.
What would you give for Bill Rafter right about now?
Yeah,
the good news is we get Dick Vitale tomorrow night for the Duke game. I saw that.
Of course. Yeah, that'll be great. That'll be great to listen to.
He may get Trevor Cooney's name right, but you still have to end up watching the game on mute, so you're not going to actually know that he got his name right.
Well, it is what it is. I do want to, Brad, at some point here, maybe close to the tournament, I don't know when, but I was thinking about this, and we don't got enough time to get into it, but you take every Big East team going back to Miami when they first defected. You take the Virginia Techs, you take Syracuse, Boston College, Pittsburgh, Louisville. You take all these teams that have defected to the ACC, and you take their football program and their basketball program, the 5 to 10 years before they got into the league and the 5 to 10 years after they've gone to the league, and you take their winning percentages and you take their postseason performances, bowl games for football, NCAA tournament for basketball, and across the board, they're all worse. I want to actually delve into the stats and get it correct, but just at a glance, looking at these programs, I mean, Miami's an obvious one. They were national championship top 3 in the country every single year when they were in the Big East in football. I think that if you put line these numbers up, you're going to find that across the board that all the programs suffered. Maybe not finding, maybe they're getting more money from the ACC contracts or whatever, but I don't even know if that's necessarily. I mean, I guess that is true. I guess that's kind of a fact. But performance-wise, they've all tanked.
You just proved your own point. The only data point that matters is how much revenue they get. Period. End of discussion. That's all they care about. They don't care about wins or losses. They don't care about championships. They care about money. That's the way athletic directors are rewarded. That's the way college presidents are rewarded. And ultimately, that's how coaches are rewarded, like it or not.
Yeah. No. Well, that's a topic for another show when I get some time to crunch the numbers. But real quick here, before we head out of here, we need our official predictions. We didn't talk much about the Virginia game because the Duke game's looming large now, less than 24 hours away. I'm going to go ahead and give you my prediction in the Duke game. I think it's going to be pretty up and down offensive type of game. I got Syracuse winning that game 78-71. Cuse wins in Duke. Bring it on. They lost 3 in a row. We won 2 in a row. Boeheim, I can guarantee you that Boeheim, they don't want to go down there and lose for a 3rd straight time in Duke. We're going to win. We're going to win tomorrow night. And you want my Virginia prediction? I don't really have one. I don't really, actually, I think.
I was waiting to see what you ended with.
Yeah, Virginia, it's going to be tough, especially coming off of the Duke game, although there is a nice 5-game rest after that. So, you know what? I'm going to have some faith in the Cuse. I think the Cuse is going to win in Virginia by a score of 68-66. There you go. 2 wins, 2 big wins. At the end of this week, Cuse is looking strong again. We're back getting votes in the top 25. We're back on the good side of the bubble after 2 wins this week. I don't know if you feel the same, Brad.
I don't feel the same. I think that there's a better chance that Syracuse beats Duke than Virginia, and the reason why is matchups. Mm-hmm. I think that Syracuse doesn't match up well with Virginia. That Virginia just forces you to play such a slow pace, and it becomes such a slog. Yeah. And ordinarily, because you cut down on possessions, it gives you a better chance for the upset if you're the less talented team, which I think unfortunately Syracuse probably is. But it just feels like Virginia has the ability to beat you up, almost Big East style from back in the day. And I don't think Syracuse is physical enough to be able to contend with that level of play. I don't think you get a guy like Coleman fall out pretty quickly in a game like that, and Roberson's not big enough to bang around. Neither is Leiden, and I don't think Richardson wants to bang with anybody. And I just think that's a tough matchup for Syracuse against Virginia. So I think Virginia's going to win that game. And I think they'll win. They'll have a 6 to 8 point lead the entire game, and Syracuse will never be able to get over the hump, unfortunately, in that game. Against Duke, I see Syracuse getting out to a big lead. I see them getting hot from the outside and Duke not getting out on shooters. And somehow I feel like the calls will reverse themselves in the second half, and Duke will come away with a 7 or 8 point victory. I hate to say it.
Well, honestly, I don't know what to think. These are 2 picks where I'm picking with my heart a little more than my head. A little bit with my head in the Duke game, though. Just why I got a chance to see Duke a couple times. I watched that entire Notre Dame game. And why not? Why not? So.
Why not? I think it's not, like I said, they're as ripe for the picking as they've probably ever been since Syracuse has been in the Big East or in the ACC. So I think if it's going to happen, it could very easily happen tomorrow night.
Well, Brad, thanks again for sitting in for.
I got one more for the road I wanted to throw in.
Oh, that's right.
Got a second.
Yep.
So my dad, shout out to my dad who's in the Panhandle of Florida right now, enjoying the sun and warmth. Forwarded me an article just yesterday, Jim, about the Northwest Florida State basketball team, junior college power that they are. They have a guy named Mustafa Diagne who's averaging 24 a game. 12 rebounds, 2 blocks on 62% shooting. He's tearing it up in the for Northwestern Florida State. I don't even know what their league is, but they're junior college Division I. They're power.
Yeah, thank you NCAA. Thank you NCAA for that.
Yep. So my dad stumbled upon that. He recognized the name and thought, hey, that's something you guys want to talk about.
Yeah, no kidding, Bruce. That's a good one. You know what? Maybe we should next week take a little in-depth look at his season. See what, and hopefully he'll be coming back. But up against it tonight, Brad. So thanks again for sitting in for an hour talking Cuse Hoops. We'll see what happens tomorrow at Duke, and we'll be back here next Saturday or next Sunday to talk all about it.
It'll be fun. Hopefully we got 2 wins to talk about, just like this week.
And so thanks to everybody for joining us on the Upstate Orange podcast. We'll be back again next Sunday with another edition. You can subscribe to our feed on iTunes, Stitcher.com, YouTube, or via RSS. We're online at www.fingerlakes1.tv/Upstate Orange. For the Professor, Brad Connor, I'm Jim Sinacropi. Have a great week. Beat Duke, and let's go Orange.